monocle.
Yeah.
And it's only for distance. If I'm at a computer, I take it off because I can't see anything close when I've got it on. But if I want to see something farther away than like 6 feet or so, I've got to stick this in. You see, it's got little, this is called a gallery, the tubes that stick out. One's supposed to catch the excess skin of your upper eyelid. I got a lot of it. So if you need extra, I got some, and the it hooks on the bottom as well. But again, if I'm going to be online here, I'll just put it away.
No.
Almost all the monocles you're going to find are for people that are farsighted. They need it for reading.
Yeah.
There are very few of them that are actually for nearsighted people, but there's a company that does it called Nearsights. They make monocles for by prescription down in Los Angeles. So anyway,
that is amazing. Now, does it hook to your belt loop? Like what?
No, it'll. I got a 28-inch. But it's not really easy to pick it up and stick it in your eye. So I got a 36-inch one instead, which is supposed to be delivered today, but I haven't seen it yet. So, but the UPS delivers. We're not even considered inside the Bay Area. We're considered rural for delivery purposes. So I've gotten things where they said guaranteed by 10 a.m. the next day, and then we get notice. Oh well, I'm sorry, but you're rural. They don't guarantee before 10, but I got it before 10 anyway. So they just wouldn't guarantee it.
So Jay, thanks for hanging with us. Joshua Moore, thank you. Now that we got Jay, we can go through those hard questions when Radar and everybody.
The group that you've got can answer hard questions, for God's sakes. I'm not an essential piece of this outfit.
Okay,
we like having you anyways.
No, yeah, we do. Good to see you.
I'm like a freaking hood ornament.
No.
You do have a bobblehead, don't you? He's already been merchandised.
Actually, I have two. I have one bobblehead that's like all of the rest of them, and it has the blue patch for the company logo on the shirt. So I have the original prototype. I have the original prototype that doesn't have the BSI logo. Well, it's not really our logo. They just did BSI in blue. So you've got a little one with BSI in it?
Yep. Yeah, I do right there.
So I've got
that's the collectible one.
I have the original prototype that has no label on the shirt.
Awesome.
And I'm thinking of putting it up on this year's auctions at the summit. We'll see.
Oh, that's great.
Sky's a little agitated. My son is out there working on the AC part of the install. So he's putting in, right now it's the outdoor outlet that we can plug from the shed to the house with. So he's wiring that in right now. And since Sky sees somebody in his yard, he barks. So
well, tell Vaughn to wave hello when he comes by.
If he comes through, I'll get him. But I think he's pretty well knuckled down on the project right now. But
yeah,
I told him I was going for a group chat online thing, and he said, "Work or pleasure?" I said, "Well, it's pleasure, but it's kind of work too." It's Neuro Noodle. He said, "Oh, Pete."
Oh, cool.
So,
all right, Vaughn. Hey, our good friend Art is here. Artie Choke. Could you talk a bit more about the fallacy of poor man's coherence with regards to sequential training? What's poor man's coherence?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, sequential training is not poor man's coherence. Sequential training has the assumption of things that are phase locked. and coherence allows for phase shift as long as the phase is stable. So you could be out of phase, exactly out of phase, but if you're exactly out of phase constantly, you're still highly coherent. So you just have to have stable phase relationship. And I do know that, for instance, Siegfried used to suggest that sequential training or bipolar training is an inappropriate term, but it's common. It's just bipolar is an amplifier term. It's a push-pull differential or bipolar amp. And they used to have monopolar amps with a ground and an active electrode. They're not. You won't find them in normal commercial use. So, but monopolar amps are used in music. You know,
Interesting.
yeah. So, you know, a musician ends up with an amplifier that isn't a difference between two signals. It's basically just a referential direct input. So.
Jay, while waiting for the next question, as we get around to it, do you happen to have? This is so bad.
At Sassoon Summit since 2018, we've been getting around to it.
Nice.
And this year, people that get around to it for donating to students and stuff. Now you see that the size of this is actually a sizable coin, and as I said to somebody online, it's a big coin. I had the option of a star shaped, but I thought something this big star shaped was dangerous. You know the crowd it's going to be handed out in, so a round one is a lot safer without the points. And I said, but if you threw it just right, you could probably skip it almost all the way across the turning basin. And they said, well, who would throw a challenge coin? And I said, well, maybe somebody with 100 of them, you know. That happens to be me, you know. So anyway, these are the round to-its, and for people that get around to it, this is for donations to students. You get around to it. Cool. Anyway, the more common coin that we have, which is of no face value, is just faces. It's got a face and a face, so there's no apparent face value to this one. But,
draw the model.
That's or it might be a Bitcoin.
We wish, yeah.
A Gunkel bit, you know. No,
that's good.
It's not worth the nickel it's printed on. Or it's invaluable, one or the other, you know. So anyway, those go to people that see me, but people that actually have intention to donate something to the students and stuff, they'll get around to it. So
October 6th, 7th, 8th, Jay, is that one?
8th is the reception, the evening prior to the actual scientific event. Although a lot of discussion in the social things happens to be scientific, so you know sometimes the best stuff is done at the bar, you know. So, and we've got a venue with a bar, so you know how much better can it get? So the 8th is the reception. 9th, 10th, and 11th is the 3 days of meeting. The 11th is the luau dinner. It's an island theme, Gunkelman's Island, and it's after Gilligan's Island. So come to Sassoon and get laid, you know, around your neck. You know,
you got to charge more.
All the bad jokes are already started. The front of the yacht club will be done up like a grass shack. The boat out front will have a sign SS Minnow, You know,
I'll be the
for
skipper.
those of you who remember Gilligan's Island at all, you know. So anyway, we intend to have really good science and a lot of fun. And if you're not having a lot of fun while you're doing your science, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, it's your own fault.
Yeah.
So Anthony and Joshua, I traded a Thursday appearance of Jay for a Wednesday, so we could really squeeze. Oh, wait, who's that?
Cool. Yeah, it's cool.
Anthony, I think you got some issues.
I'll be right back. Okay.
That happens every now and then with his account.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, it's just us boys. All right, now Anthony's gone. So all the unanswered questions from last week, we were talking about restless legs. We were talking about SMR and wait, hold on. Here's Anthony back. All right, there you
guys, go. Appreciate it.
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
We took care of Artichoke. I'm sure we're waiting for Radar and all our other friends. Anything else come up, Anthony and Joshua, throughout the week that we can press Jay on?
Well, there was one article, and hopefully this will be interesting. An article came out this week. I was hoping actually you two saw, Josh and Jay, and it said that in their study that insomnia seemed to explain all of the difference in life satisfaction among ADHD patients. And I thought that was so cool because, for one, I remembered that I think Jay has talked about sun exposure and delayed sleep phase disorder and ADHD. So there's already a connection with insomnia or sleep disorders and ADHD. And then I also know that in recent weeks, and there've been studies that perseveration and rumination can keep people up. And those are often symptoms of ADHD. So I thought that was really cool. And it just supports what Jay does and Josh and everyone else when they're talking about, hey, your ADHD child, are they sleeping? Can we work on the, maybe we can work on the sleep and maybe that, through neurofeedback and other means. So there you go.
Sleep problems can give you a primary disorder of vigilance where you just cannot stay awake. Okay. So you're sitting there in school, your eyes are open, but your consciousness is going, and eventually your eyes might even do that. But if you're not really on and attending, you're not really in attendance at school. And you can be sitting in class and getting credit for being there for the day. They'll get paid for your attendance as opposed to staying home where the school wouldn't be paid for your nap time at home. But you can get a nap in school and they get paid for it. If they notice that you're dozing, they may think you're inattentive. And between 25 and 50% of the people that are diagnosed with ADD have a sleep disorder.
Wow.
Now, that's a hell of a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you make a statement like that, you should be able to kind of show me the data. And let's look at if I can do a screen share.
I would say if the study's not very new, it's probably getting worse.
We haven't done a screen share yet here, Jay. I don't even know how to do it.
Oh, I don't either.
Is it the Martin Arns study on?
No, this is vigilance, EG phenotypes, and ADD, ADHD, and
I've got that.
Sleep phenotypes of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the role of arousal during sleep, and implications for treatment. That's a long name for a study, don't you think? But the first, in the abstracts, they start out about 25 to 50% of children or adolescents with ADD are actually have a sleep problem. The number one sleep problem that they talk about is characterized by under-aroused state resembling narcolepsy, but no cataplexy. So that's the student in class, kind of dozy, can't stay awake. That's a primary form of ADD, ADHD. They just cannot stay focused and attentive. But if you teach them how to stay awake with their EEG, they'll get out of this sleep characterizing phenotype. Other phenotype is delayed sleep onset. That's the delayed circadian rhythm with the sun exposure helping them. And again, the Desert Southwest has a 10% lower rate of ADD, ADHD than the non-sunshiny states.
Wow.
And that's a huge impact. That it goes from like 5 to 7% in some states where it's low, to 15, 20% in states where it's high. So the delayed circadian rhythm is obviously the one that gets treated with sunlight. Just like if you had delayed circadian rhythm and you couldn't fall asleep on time, you couldn't wake up in the morning, you need to take bright light in the morning and melatonin at night to reset your circadian rhythm. Well, neurofeedback can help with the circadian rhythm as well. There's another one that's disordered breathing. I mean, if you can't breathe properly at night, you're not going to get the deep restful sleep of recovery, and you're not going to get the REM. Your sleep is going to be fractured because of the necessity of breathing. And then there's restless legs. Restless leg syndrome is actually treated with methylphenidate-like medications, all dopamine oriented. And methylphenidate is a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. It actually does help with restless leg. So, and then lastly, there's the rare people that actually have epileptiform discharges in their sleep. And the name of the specific seizure type that you have seizures in your sleep is electrographic status epilepticus of sleep, ESES. That's the kind that Maggie had. If you remember I think at the time she might have been 8. She's I'm a cheerleader or somewhere now. So actually tripped and fell and fractured 2 bones in her arm and had them reset. I've seen the pictures of the hardware. That the doctor's got a lot of screws in her arm, I tell you. But no problems with seizures or medications or anything like that. She's been seizure free since she was declared seizure free by her epileptologist. She was actually giving a little diploma of having a healthy EEG, which is, I thought, a clever move for a doctor who's doing testing. So.
That's awesome. And did
anyway,
with those phenotypes was the sleep phenotypes of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Okay, just want to make sure I have
that in the chat, Anthony. I'd like to get access to that. Make sure I have that one integrated into my file.
In the handout folder that I have, it's tucked into a folder called drowsiness.
Okay.
And you might be able to find it there.
Okay.
I think I found it on Google too, so I'll be posting that, guys.
I have like my own folder that I move things in after I like integrate that information well. Like study something and then move it into another folder.
Hey, Triona came back.
That's great.
Anthony, you got it?
Yeah, but so YouTube will not accept my links, so I will post it in our chat on StreamYard, and then you guys can.
Okay.
Or Pete or whoever,
I missed what you said about the restlessness. Can you circle back to that again? Maybe elaborate on the phenotype.
Restless leg? Is that the one?
Yep.
Jay was speaking about. Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, restless leg syndrome is one of the sleep phenotypes that can mimic ADD. If you're going to fall asleep and you feel crawly, gotta move them thing in your legs, that's the kind of thing. It can also be restless legs, meaning when you fall asleep, your legs are twitching and kicking. The excessive movement in the leg is identifiable with basically they stick an electrode on your calf and look for EMG changes in the leg. So they'll see it in movement as well. They've got movement sensors on you as well. We actually had a full sleep lab, 3-bed sleep lab, and you're hooked up for everything, including sound. So that you'll have things hooked up you didn't even know you had, and they've perhaps seen the cartoon with the person with wires hanging off everywhere, and they tell them, okay, now go lay down and go to sleep, and they look at you like, You kidding me? You know, most people in a sleep lab that have a sleep disorder don't mind it at all. If you point to somewhere to lay down, they'll go lay down and fall asleep. If you have insomnia, you'll complain, I can't sleep with all this stuff on me. You know, how can this be a valid test?
Yeah.
You know, well, that's why they don't test insomniacs. Number one, they can't get paid, and number two, the person complains about the whole thing. You know, so it's tough. But they do not want you to accept an insomniac for testing because they don't want to pay for that. So nowadays in the US, it's extremely common, not elsewhere in the world, but in the US, it's extremely common for people to be tested as a screening, multiple sleep onset screening, multiple sleep latency testing, MSLT. And they'll give you 5 tries for a nap in the afternoon. They don't hook everything up. They hook up a few channels of EEG, not even the whole thing, just enough to tell you what state you're in. And if you have a vertex sharp wave, you're at stage 2 where you fell asleep. And they'll wake you back up and say, you fell asleep. They'll let you be awake for a little bit, and then you get another try. And if on the average you fall asleep faster than 5 minutes, you've got a sleep disorder at night. It's a disorder of excessive sleepiness. You cannot stay awake. And that's their client. If you can't stay awake, that's their client. And you know, an insomniac will go in and they'll be drowsy in and out of stage 1, like you've seen them, eyes open and eyes closed, can't stay awake, can't sleep at night, can't stay awake in the day. That's insomnia. But a sleep disorder, they'll sleep whenever they hold still and have a chance. They just doze right off. We had a coworker at the state hospital. Everybody would get together for a meeting in the room, and he'd get a chair. He'd tilt the chair back in the corner, and his head would sit against the wall, and he would be asleep like that. Just he'd be gone as soon as he sat down and tilted back. There was a little greasy spot on the wall. It was where his head rested every day. And but he couldn't stay awake. If he wasn't actively moving, he would doze right off because he had a problem with apnea. He had a Pickwickian apnea, which is due to weight. Pickwick was in Dickens. He was the orphanage fellow, big overweight guy who ran the orphanage and was nasty to all the kids. So.
I wanted to ask more for Triona. Jay, she was asked, sounds like the restless leg. She wanted to know which medication, and I think it's ropinirole, but I wanted to ask you, before somebody pursue the medication, you mentioned that restless leg could be related to dopamine, and that makes me think of frontal lobe. And yep. I know that it's always dependent on the EEG, but I just wanted to know, would something like frontal slow waves or ACC failure, et cetera, could that be contributing to somebody's restless leg?
In fact, there's 2 things, the dopamine and also beta spindling.
Interesting.
So what do you see in insomnia? 2 common findings. One of them is the frontal midline, which is the perseverative rumination. I go to lay down and I'm thinking about my taxes, and for God's sakes, it's January. I'm not supposed to be thinking about my taxes in January, you know, but there it is, you know, your cingulate locks onto it and it won't let go. You could think, oh, it's January, let go. No, I'm sorry, but I'm locked on, you know, and it's hard to get rid of something that the cingulate locks onto. It's perseverative. So the cingulate can do that, but CZ is where the legs are. And CZ is where the beta is from orexin, which is the wakefulness drive for the body. It keeps your body awake. And you see it at CZ, but you also see it a bit frontally. It's big at CZ for insomnia, hyperactivity, impulsivity, a little bit more frontal. Martijn Arns was in on the original study. He replicated it with a different patient population with a higher percentage of ADD, ADHD in it, not the broad population that Ron Swatsina's approximately 2,000 people represent. He had a group with the brain research company in Australia provided the data, and it had a heavier loading at ADD, ADHD. They didn't see CZ for insomnia as much as they saw the impulsivity, hyperactivity findings frontally, but they found frontal beta spindles, not CZ beta spindles. So it gives you the idea that there's a little nuanced difference between just CZ and frontal beta that's present. They're related on a neurochemical basis, but they're functionally separate locations, so they have different behavioral manifestations. Same signal, same kind of a problem, different manifestation based on the different turf.
That is interesting.
What's buspirone?
Buspirone?
Yeah.
I thought it was an anti-anxiety, but go on, Jay. Sorry.
Buspar is an anti-anxiety medication. It works on dopamine and serotonin.
Oh.
And its effect on dopamine ends up giving you a little pleasure center boost. It's really good for anxiety, but it takes 3 weeks to become any effectiveness at all. If you have anxiety, the doctor probably is going to give you something that gives you benefit now, today, not 3 weeks from now. And you're going to be really happy you got it, except that 3 or 4 or 5 weeks from now, when you need more of it because your body is habituated to it, the benzodiazepine they gave you for anxiety is no longer effective. It was a mistake in the first place. Yeah. If you read the PDR, physician desk reference, that tells them what to prescribe and when and how, it will tell them that the benzodiazepines are only good for short-term use, a few weeks.
Yes.
Not a few months, a few weeks.
Years.
Yeah, but you've seen people that have been on it for years, and their dose is higher, and you look at their EEG, and you see this 18 hertz buzz, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, somewhere to peak at 17, 18 hertz. That beta spindle is just a benzodiazepine buzz. And it's big and awful because they've got their dose jacked up. But you know, if you've been on it for a while, the doctor that put you on it is going to have to boost the dose to keep it effective. And eventually they don't want to boost the dose because they've got liability, and they've been warned now. A decade ago, it wasn't as common knowledge that benzodiazepines actually mimic dementia when you've been on it long term, and people are backing away from it. There's other anxiolytics other than Buspar that are also better today, and that would be the tetracyclics. Some of the tricyclics work as well, but the side effect profiles are a little higher. Elavil, they come up with the names, don't they? The elevate your mood with Elavil, it's a tricyclic, and it has negative side effects on visceral and autonomic function, and it's largely been kind of set aside. Some of them, nortriptylinist, are used a bit, but largely tricyclics have been set aside. Tetracyclics are much newer. Remeron or Trazodone are the brand names. Mirtazapine is one of the generic names. But they're good in that they reduce beta spindling and they slightly slow the alpha. If your frontal alpha that's hypercoherent is faster than 10, you're a candidate for a tetracyclic. The SSRIs and SNRIs are only good for slower alpha. If it's very slow, an SNRI, if it's a little slower than 10, an SSRI would be just fine. Faster than 10, you get over-arousal side effects from SSRIs, and even worse from SNRIs. Then N in SNRI is norepinephrine, and a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor is like Strattera, which is considered a non-stimulant stimulant. What are you, a non-stimulant stimulant? Are you a stimulant or aren't you? They're trying to claim not to be an amphetamine, and they're not an amphetamine, but they have a similar effect with a reuptake inhibitor instead of an agonist. So instead of forcing you to have more norepinephrine, it keeps the norepinephrine you put out around for you. And it's a more gentle stimulant, but it's a stimulant. I'm not a stimulant is just like the people saying I'm not a barbiturate or I'm not a benzo. Come on.
Getting
Let's be a little
to
bit honest.
Triona's question here. Hold on. How would you talk to a psychiatrist about assessing for this medication based on the QEEG? Would a psychiatrist even know anything about the QEEG?
First of all, psychiatry and EEG aren't exactly in the same category. If you look on the wall, they have a certificate that says they're boarded in psychiatry and neurology. Okay, they should be equivalent to the neurologist, shouldn't they? But if you're a psychiatrist and you want to become an electroencephalographer, they make you go back and take a neurology residency. They want to squeeze all the psychiatry thoughts out of your head before you look at the EEG, because the EEG is limited to epilepsy and encephalopathies. There's nothing psychiatric in the EEG. Jedi mind trick. There's nothing in the EEG for psychiatrists.
You're looking for.
Go elsewhere. This is not the droid you're looking for. So, but psychiatry and EEG are absolutely perfect for one another. Neuropsychology and EEG are perfect for one another, except that they don't do it. Neuropsychology is paper and pencil testing. They don't do EEG. And, you know, it's a shame, because EEG is a perfect signal to reflect the function of the organ that they're attempting to assess and treat. So, a shame.
One of the things Triona asked last time, and I wanted to maybe see if somebody could answer her. She said, I have a patient that their Z-scores are showing way excess of theta. And then she said, but I don't know what frequencies to reward. There are no frequencies to reward. And I could be totally off base here. And I got a sense that maybe her system doesn't really ever allow or encourage to suppress frequencies. Could that even be true? And the reason I ask this is because I'm wondering, perhaps suppression could be in order for some of the symptoms and scans that she's describing here. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, when people say that they've got Z-score deviations and they can't see anything to train, I always want to see the actual data. Z-scores are a derived measure. They're not the signal that you're training unless you're doing Z-score type training, and then you're stuck with Z-score training, which is linked ears. And linked ears isn't always a good montage. If you have a strong signal in the temporal area, it contaminates the ear, broadcasting itself everywhere and canceling itself where it actually is. I presented in 1998 a case of false frontal alpha. The person had migraine. They had alpha T5, T6, the posterior temporal parietal junction, hot spots of alpha. And as soon as you switch from Laplacian, which would show it at T5, to linked ears, which now pick it up in the ears and broadcast it everywhere, you don't see it at T5, T6, because it cancels itself. It's in the reference and the EEG, so it cancels. And it broadcasts, if there's no alpha up front and there's alpha in the ear reference, you see alpha up front. It's the difference between the reference and the point. So if you look at the map, it looks like there's this frontocentral alpha, but it's a false image. You can't train that any more than you can drink from a mirage. You know, I mean, it looks like you could drink it. You know, let's just run another mile or two down the road. It'll be all wet. You know, I'm afraid that's a mirage.
Jay,
you're not going to get any water out of that mirage. You know, so you know, Z-scores can be like that too. They can be false indications because of a bad reference. The absolute power might be high in all bands because you've got a thin skull. It's not attenuating the voltage, and all your voltages are going to be high. Was there nothing to train? I'm afraid there probably is. You're just not looking at a metric that's going to show it. Switch to a transform like relative power or log power. And see whether you get a better look at the data set that you're looking at, and make sure if you're looking at an EEG that you use more than one montage, because you can be fooled from your perspective. You know, if you're looking straight at me, how big is my nose? You know, you got to see the profile. So you got to see 3D in order to know what something really is like. You can't just look at it from one perspective. Is there a big butt sticking out the back end? I mean, what's the shape of this? You're going to get a better idea of what you're really looking at by looking at it from more than one perspective. And the standards for interpretation call for more than one perspective. That they warn you against the mistake of using only one montage, and you'll make a mistake.
How common is that reference contamination?
If I'm trying to be as honest as I possibly can, about 20% of the time, linked years gives you really perfectly good data. No problem whatsoever. You're going to get the same answer with linked years as you do with the Laplacian.
Okay.
But more than half the time, you're going to find a contaminated reference, and it's going to distort your data in a way that's distorted enough to be clinical.
Yeah.
So at least half the time, you're really ill-advised, and 20% of the time, you're well-advised. But linked years is not the best bet. There's a paper called Dangerous Phase, written by Nunez's lab. It's a very short paper, a couple pages long, and they start out by saying, in quotes, pick a clean reference, and they refer to fine back in the 1980s, as in a paper. And if you've got a bad reference, it creates bad data. The reference signal will be in your other channels as well. So pick a good reference. And then they go and talk about the problems with the linked year references. You've got a common signal on all channels, and if it's not a good signal, it's a really bad EEG. And so you have to remontage. And they suggest that the Laplacian montages could be considered. And they suggest that the global average and the current source density, which are two kinds of Laplacian technique, they're not local Laplacian, which is the most noisy of the Laplacians. The global average is less noisy. Current source density controls for distance, and it's like global average with Limos's correction for distance. Almost everybody's correction for spatial distribution is going back to tables that were developed by measuring and everything by Limos. So they just pull Limos's data out and toss it into their metric, and it corrects for the distance from every electrode. So it's a little bit cleaner for current source density. It's considered a reference-free reference, but global average is awfully close. There's slight differences, very slight. And but they're both recommended for looking at coherence and also spectrum. So they say the clearest image of the coherence is from current source density and global average, and that you need to be very cautious of coherence with linked years, because the linked year reference inflates common signals because of the reference point. And the common signal from a single reference point basically it gives you, in phase common signal. So it drives all the coherences up if you've got a bad reference.
Welcome, Lynn, to the show.
There are databases that don't let you look at coherence with Laplacian because they say it distorts it. Well, you can either look at enough data to know what you're talking about, or you can listen to the experts. If you haven't seen 500,000 and you haven't seen 200,000, you haven't seen 20,000, you might have only seen a few hundred, and you wonder, gee, which one of those experts is correct? Look at who they are. Which one is selling you something, and which one is just publishing?
We have a question here.
I would go with Nunez myself. He's well published and a real good, reliable reference if you need one. So Nunez's group is the source of the Dangerous Phase paper.
Dangerous Phase.
Dangerous Phase. That was great, Jay. Yeah. Pete, did you want to read it or me?
Go ahead, Anthony. You got a sweet sounding voice tonight.
Oh, you're funny. Okay. We have a question from Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. And she says, what do years of antipsychotic medication do to a child who may actually have a TBI?
Oh man, that's tragic. That's painfully tragic. So, antipsychotics, first of all, are a class that's a broad class. There's some that are more problematic than others. Some of the newest ones that are atypical antipsychotics include clozapine or clozaril. And a third of the people that start on clozapine or clozaril will have epileptiform content in their EEG by 3 years. It causes it.
Wow.
You don't start out with it. It causes it. And that wasn't known initially. We were actually in a receiving lab, and we received from one of the hospitals, state hospital, that was doing some of the drug testing on it. And we were seeing everybody who comes in with this clozaril, which is a brand new medication back then, there's a high probability that they have epileptiform content, and we report that through to the FDA. There's methods. If you see some odd drug effect, you're supposed to report to the FDA, and they keep track of this stuff. Well, they went back to the manufacturer and said, well, you gave us 6 months of testing showing only 5%, and we thought 3 to 5% is the background incidence in the population, so there's no effect on epilepsy. Well, now there's places saying, well, we're seeing it real commonly, so we want you to give us 1 year of data. And the percentage went up. And they said, well, make it 2 years. It went up further. They said, well, make it 3 years. And then it went from 5% to 10% to 20% to 30%. It didn't get any worse than 30% at 3 years. But that's a third of the people taking an antipsychotic that actually have epileptiform content in their EEG and probably would do better with an anticonvulsant.
Okay.
If the person's EEG is not a stable EEG with excess beta, which is seen in psychiatric cases, beta in the 20s and 30s, really excitable cortex beta. So if you've got a clean EEG otherwise, other than the beta deviation, you can probably get away with an antipsychotic without having a bad side effect. If you've got epileptiform content or paroxysms, you need to think of taking an antipsychotic off the list and putting an anticonvulsant on the list. And which anticonvulsant ends up being important as well, different ones for different specific purposes. Temporal findings, excess spindly beta findings. Glutamate modulator is Lamictal. Glutamate's an excitatory neurochemical, so it's really good at beta spindles. In the 30s and high 20s, it'll reduce those nicely and stabilize the EEG. So Keppra is great for temporal lobe discharges. The most commonly prescribed anticonvulsant in the United States in an ER. But then in an ER, you'll never get Lamictal prescribed because ER don't follow you. And whoever gives you the Lamictal is going to have to follow you tomorrow and the day after for a few weeks to make sure you don't have a rash or a fever. If they don't catch it, you could end up with aplastic anemia and die. That's not a good outcome, you know. And since the ER can't follow you, that's not in their job description to walk out and check patients the next day or the next week. That's the internist. Now they'll give you Keppra and a referral to a neurologist or an internist to end up being managed as an epileptic, but they won't prescribe Lamictal because again it has to be tracked real carefully in the short term. If you have a short-term rash or a fever, your immune system is reacting to it, and you've got to stop it. And if you don't, again, it can be very, very problematic, like death. You know,
That's all.
That's a negative outcome. You know,
this is why I was asking for Triona, but for others too, that it would be so much better. I'm not saying I know that it's always the case, but if they could address, be it restless leg or something else, through neurofeedback rather than medication that she was asking about. Example, I actually had, before I discovered neurofeedback, I dabbled with some restless leg symptoms. I don't suffer from them now, but I went to my GP and they said to me, look, we have this drug. It's a dopamine medication, like Jay said, called ropinirole. It is a common one. He said, but look, when you take it, you're probably going to need more of it. And if you stop taking it, the symptoms may get worse. Now, this is what I've been able to ascertain from him. And then they even said, I don't know if this is my GP or online, if you take it long enough, there is a chance of getting something called tardive dyskinesia, which is a motor symptom where you can't control your movement. So I'm thinking, that's why I was asking for Triona. Triona, have we looked at the EEG? And one last point, Jay was talking about antipsychotics. I have a friend who their psychiatrist in Gainesville does do EEG. They do seem to be familiar with EEG phenotypes. I don't know if they got them from Jay or others, but there's some similar. I've seen some of the reports. They have done neurofeedback.
They didn't catch phenotypes for me as not transmissible.
There you go. Funny. But I was, yes. Well,
you can't catch it. You can learn it, but you can't catch it.
But I'm so happy that you've done what you've done with them, and I said this last week, so I'm glad Jay's here though to hear. Her psychiatrist has taken her off of antipsychotics since neurofeedback treatment. It's been a little bit of time now. But so that's exciting. She also lowered, Jay, she told me she lowered her Adderall prescription from 20 milligrams a day to 5. And she says, a lot of times I don't even take it because I don't need it. And when I do, it makes me feel worse. And that's all from neurofeedback. You can't make this up. But anyway, thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
When you take away the need for the medication, the drive, then why are you taking it? I mean, you don't feel the need for it anymore either. Mm-hmm. And we do work with people with epilepsy only when their neurologist and epileptologist are aware of what we're doing, because it's going to change the demand for the antipsychotic, for the anticonvulsant. And as the need for it drops, the side effects of being on it end up going up somewhat. So interesting. The doctor needs to be aware that we're messing with their client, and we can't change their meds because that's not our prescription. It's not our business.
Yes.
And we get the patient better, and when the patient's better, the doctor doesn't want them on the meds any more than we want them on the meds. So they'll pull the meds when the time is right. And the person getting over-activated from the amphetamine, they'll pull the drug dose down and maybe even stop it because of the side effects.
Yeah.
Radar, it's okay.
Yeah. Thanks for saying hey there, Radar. He let us know he has a new job responsibility, I guess. So you're here in spirit. We appreciate it, man.
He's got his hands full of saline paste.
Oh, he's constantly experimenting, I think. Yeah.
Joshua, what do you got working on in your app? Is that even right to call it an app? A workshop? What do you have going on?
I'm just doing a workshop. I've been doing WinEEG editing, stuff. I'm basically building a workshop for WinEEG, and then I did the low voltage fast phenotype, which turned out really, really, really good. That one was easy for me because I'm really passionate about it. And so I'm mostly just doing the editing, and it's probably 80-90% done. And I've got 3 different modules that have slides built, but they're all they're all draft. And I don't think I'm a perfectionist. It's my process. I run through it, and then I actually do a presentation, and then I pick it apart and I double check and triple check everything. And eventually I'm like, nope, I got to redo it. So I probably do it 3 times, but by the time I've done it a 3rd time, I could probably do it live and it would be great. But it makes for a decent presentation, and I know the knowledge a lot better. So in some ways, this is my process for learning, and the other way, it makes for a good product.
What are beaks? Give me a topic. Give me a heading.
What do you mean? Like a topic?
Yeah, a heading.
Benzos, and the first thing I was thinking about with benzos is, people who are in the field need to learn about post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And you're going to deal with that, and you're going to deal with that more because they're backing off on it. And that's not something small. If you just think that's a passive thing that you can read an article on and then you're good to go, that's not true. You need to get consultation. You need to get some special supervision. That is really hard to work with. Neurofeedback can do a lot, and they'll tell you this is the best thing that someone's offered me to help, but they still need a lot. Just because you've taken a 20% edge off and that's the biggest chunk anyone's ever taken out of their symptoms, doesn't mean it's enough. And post-acute withdrawal syndrome can last, 18 months to 2 years in extreme cases. And we are seeing extreme cases come in the door all the time because people are being taken off those meds. So it's a hard one. It's a very hard one.
What's going on up there when you? Why are benzos so hard to get off of?
Is it the beta?
Jay can definitely answer this too.
Let's say you're a brain, and we expose you to benzos. You're going to replicate receptor sites
like crazy,
and those receptor sites have to be saturated for you to end up relaxed. So benzos give you GABA for your GABA receptors, but you make more receptors. So the next time you take it, you saturate most of the receptors, but not all the receptors, because you just made a bunch more. And the next time you take it, you make more and more and more. So your dose has to go up to retain efficacy. And even then, you're making more and more receptor sites. The glia manufacture more of them than anywhere else.
Interesting.
But you're cranking out more receptors, so you can't saturate them. How can you get relaxed if you have too many excitatory neurons firing away? The receptor sites for stabilizing them have replicated to the point where you can't saturate them. So your brain is now out of control officially because you've taken a medication that made it out of control. It's an iatrogenic side effect of taking the benzos. Read the PDR. Take them for a few days, maybe a few weeks max. So let's say, oh man, it's the holidays, and Uncle Joe is such a nut. He's going to be there. The family dynamics are going to be all topsy-turvy. There's going to be stuff thrown back and forth at the table. It's going to be an ugly weekend. And please, doc, give me a Valium or equivalent thereof. Valium was popularized back in the day. Remember does anyone have a Valium? And everyone on the airplane says, okay, well, that it was a very common drug at one point. Mama's little helper, and so you basically end up with something that's good for a weekend bad family gathering. The anxiety associated with that. Maybe if you have presentation anxiety and you're going to go and give a big talk and you're just not going to be able to perform, you might consider it for the day
or pre-surgery if you have anxiety.
The possibility. You got to make sure that your surgeon realizes that your anesthesiology person realizes that you're on a benzo already. So
well, they'll actually offer it these days because they found that some of the anesthetics they're using are ineffective if you have too much anxiety. And so if you are prone to anxiety and they offer you a benzo, it is actually appropriate to say yes because it makes the other anesthesia more effective. And they're doing that on purpose. That's the anesthesiologist offering you the benzo.
They often offer benzodiazepines to people that are about to have an MRI as well. If you suffer from anxiety and claustrophobia, they'll ask you. And if you say, yeah, I do, that they have a standing prescription order. They can give you some. And so I had to go in for an MRI of my head. Where else would they check, and they asked me, I said, no, are you sure you have no anxiety? Because they see across the shoulders, the tube they stick you in is a certain size, and I'm a little broader across the girth. So they actually had me cross my arms and they taped me. So I'm taped like this. That they asked, do you have claustrophobia? I said, absolutely not. You sure you're going to be okay like this in that tube for the whole time? It's absolutely fine. So they put the grid on your head. Now I'm taped down and I'm pinned down with the little grid over your head when they're doing a scan of the head itself. And they stick me in the tube, they do the scan, and they're done. So you're on a wooden plank base, polished. It's not like a bad plank. You're not going to get slivers, but you're on a wooden plank. And to get you out, they pull the bed that you're on, and I'm stuck to the walls. They had to grab my feet to pop me out of the MRI. And they said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I told you I didn't have any anxiety. I have frontal midline theta." They wouldn't understand
They
that.
don't know
You
what
know,
that
they're
means.
not AG people, but no fear, no worry. You know.
What about if you told them the no pituitary thing? Would they then say, "Oh, we get it"?
That I didn't tell them why they were doing the scan, and they actually the interpretation of it was normal brain, normal pituitary.
Oh Lord.
With a sinus mass.
It's a miracle.
And the fat that they put in to fill the void was thought of as a sinus mass. But I sent an email to the neuroradiologist who read the study, saying, "I'm not litigious. I just want to make sure you don't make this mistake another time. I don't have a pituitary. Look at the image. You'll see there's no pituitary. You have normal brain, normal pituitary. There is no pituitary in that image, absolutely none. And the hypothesis is gone. I mean, there isn't anything there. And the fat that you saw isn't in the cell. It's not in the sphenoid sinus. It's in the cella where the pituitary should be. So I just want to make sure you don't make this mistake again. And I was having it done because I was losing quadrants in this eye. The fat was poking the back of the eye, and I was losing half my vision or a quarter of my vision. And you know, it's if it's one eye only, it's pre-chiasmal. So having had a brain tumor previously, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't something other than just the fatty mess in there. But, you know, there wasn't something new growing, messing up the eye. So that it was a normal brain, normal pituitary was an okay enough scan for me. That there's no new neoplasm, you know. And so she never did call me.
Oh Lord.
But she called her professor in San Francisco, at UC San Francisco Med School. He called me. And he wanted me to come in to go over the images to make sure I was satisfied that it had been looked at adequately and whatnot. And so I went in and we looked at it. They said, "Yep, no pituitary. Yep, it's, you know, fat in the where this, you know." And the reason was I was losing quadrants. So they brought in a neurosurgeon, and he suggested, you know, we can go in and with a needle aspirate some of the fat out. And I said, "Well, wouldn't that make it move around more easily?" He said, "I don't know, it could." I said, "How many of these have you ever done?" He says, "Well, none. There's nobody that's got something like
he's got YouTube open."
So I suggested that if I'm an N1 experiment, I'm gonna not have that surgery done. Thank you very much, but I'll live with what I've got, you know. And you know, since then the pressure built up to the point where it popped the seal, and I'm leaking cerebrospinal fluid. And that got rid of the problem. The fat no longer pokes my eye. When my brain swells, it just leaks. So
well,
your monocle holding it.
The leak is a fix, you know, but it's also hazardous. I can catch a cold and have it become viral encephalopathy real quick. So,
last question, and we're going to shut the kitchen down. Just a tech question here, Jay. Besides buying new electrodes, to resolder a silver electrode, do you need 100% silver solder? I'm getting a -120 impedance from mixed metals. Sorry, what does afake mean?
in fact, mixed metals end up giving you biphasic spikes in the EEG, bimetallic spikes. A bad electrode, where it's a plated electrode, and your gold electrodes aren't solid gold, I'll tell you that. And as soon as you scratch them, they're no longer a gold electrode. They're now a bimetallic artifact generator. They'll create spikes in your EEG that aren't from you, it's from the electrode. And if the spike follows the electrode when you move it around, you know it's the electrode, not the brain. So, if you've got a bad electrode, buy a new electrode. So, what the hell's the expense of a
The
silver
video
electrode?
editor knew that one.
The time, if you pay yourself for the time that you're going to spend soldering that, you just paid for probably 4 or 5 electrodes that you can have on stock, you know. So, and a bad electrode can end up being a real bad thing. So let's hear a story about a bad electrode that was mistaken for the real thing. Back in the early days at Mayo Clinic, they became famous for being able to localize tumors with the EEG. This was very early in the EEG era. And back then, most neurophysiologists thought spikes were real. The spikes, real stuff, and the slow waves that you're looking at are artifact, because they're used to looking with a needle electrode at stuff. Well, with the surface electrode, the spikes were actually there because of a bad electrode. Again, a bimetallic effect. Spikes were generated by the electrode. Now, 5 patients in a row, the electrode, and they were doing 6-channel EEGs. This is back in the early days, you know, the 1930s. So back in those early days, very limited amplifier capability. So with 6 channels, they accidentally put the bad electrode on top of the spot that blinded raters. They didn't know where the tumor was. The X-ray people sent them down to get this blinded rater study done. And they accidentally stuck the bad electrode on top of the spot where the tumor was. So they got the reputation of being able to localize tumors with the EEG. They figured out shortly thereafter that those spikes were just artifact, and the slow waves that were in the same location were actually the tumor. But they figured out that the slow was the tumor, so they now knew how to localize tumors, and they just didn't tell anybody that they got their reputation based on pure artifact. But when Charlie Yeager retired, he wrote up a whole bunch of stuff about Mayo Clinic's early days, including that. So he was one of the 2 founders of the Mayo Clinic in the early 1930s. They translated Berger from the German and built their own amp. And back then, they wanted to paint the room white, and they didn't have any budget. You know, you're a department that doesn't even exist in the hospital, so you don't have a budget. So they couldn't hire the painters to paint it, so they started to whitewash it themselves with a brush and paint. The painters union came in and said, "You can't do that. That's union. We're going to strike the hospital because you're painting." You know, they said, "Well, we got to get the room painted, you know, and now you guys won't do it." So they said, "Well, don't use a brush, use a broom." So the actual union painters told them how to get around the deal, and they simply used a broom to paint with and got around the technical detail of the agreement, and they didn't have to strike the hospital for the EEG lab being painted. So
I'm turning the ovens back on for one more order. What would happen if you what would happen if you put an electrode on the roof of your mouth to train the underside of the brain? Now, if you don't have a gag reflex, you're okay here.
So, first of all, the roof of your mouth has a big air-filled void above it before you get to brain tissue. So you're really not going to be recording what you think you're recording as well as you think you're recording it. There are electrodes that you stick up your nose.
Now I'm curious.
Those are
You got
called
my attention.
nasopharyngeal electrodes.
Not
Now
fun.
imagine a coat hanger wire that goes about that far and then has an angled band on it. It's got a silver ball, a 1 centimeter silver ball on the end of it. And the whole thing is insulated except for the silver ball.
Oh boy.
And now you're going to stick this up the person's nose and to the side to measure the orbital frontal surfaces. But if you twist the wire, they could just as easily be recording off the other hemisphere. You have to really know what you're doing in order to be able to stick this up the nose and not have it go in a spot that you didn't want it. And how many people do this every day? So unless you're really good at it and have done it frequently, nasopharyngeal electrodes really aren't used anymore. They're actually not used anymore unless you're dealing with a really weird experiment of some sort. It's not a clinical tool anymore. If you look at some of the amplifiers, you'll look and you'll see a PG1, PG2 with a symbol of a nose. Nasopharyngeal, PG, NP, nasopharyngeal. What's this PG? Anyway, PG1 and PG2 are the nasopharyngeal leads marked on a head box. And you still find that on some older devices, but it's got to be an old device to find it.
Beats a needle.
Needle electrodes are used still. That they're recommended against unless that's the only way you can get the EEG. But there's times that you can't paste. Let's say I crashed my motorcycle and I had road rash up the side of my forehead. Well, you can't paste an electrode on that. That's not going to work at all. A salty paste on an open wound, give me a break. Give me the needle anytime. So there's times that you have to use a needle electrode, but they're rare. And usually the person's not in a condition to complain about it anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, Jay Gunkelman, thank you for hanging with us on this Q&A every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Joshua Moore, thank you. Anthony Ramos, thank you. Thanks. Radar, thank you for taking a break from work. Wash the saline off your gloves there. Lynn, thank you for showing up. Who else should we have showing up? Triona showed up. Yep. Thank you. And Artie Choke. Is it Art Choke?
That's right.
Thank you.
Artie Choke. Yeah.
Choke him.
Everybody's have a great night. Take a break. Thank you.
Bye. Good to see you, Jay. Thanks.
Bye, guys. Over and out.
Good to see everybody.